Well, hello there and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire, and I hope you're having a great week. Today I have another use for your stamps and coordinating dies, and this is what I call an in and out card. So this card design allows you to see cute little images on the front, and when you open up the card, and it's a tri-fold card design, so you have a place to write your message on the inside. I think it's best to show you one of the completed cards first so you can better understand this. Then I have several examples for you, going from easy to more advanced and then super easy at the end. So here's one of the examples. So from the front you can see that beautiful flower. When you open up the card you still see the flower with more of the message, and then the card flaps open again, so you have a tri-fold card and there's room in there to write your message. Let's start with this example first. Now I'm using a new pretty pink Posh stamp set called Pretty Petunias. It has some beautiful images that are quite simple, so they're great for coloring. I'm also going to be using a sentiment stamp set from Pretty Pink Posh that is new. This is a fantastic new sentiment set called Love Sentiments. Now in here are things that work great for Valentine's Day but definitely can be used all year. The style of this set is beautiful, and I like the sentiments that say love you always, all my love, you are loved, and then definitely the hello gorgeous and I love you sentiment, which I'll be using on this card. I'm using the MISTI stamping tool on this. You can do this without the MISTI stamping tool. However, I just found it easier to use the tool. And I'm placing one of the petunia images and the I love you sentiment in there. And that is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding white note card that I have inside. I'm stamping this with a Copic friendly black ink. This is Hero Art's Intense Black ink. Next, I'm going to use a little piece of tape to tape the coordinating die in place around the stamped image. I'm opening up the card and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. So I'm cutting out the flower alone, and I'm going to keep both the card and the flower piece and use them both on this card. Now I went ahead and colored this with my Copic markers, but you can color it however you would like. The nice thing is you don't have to stay in the lines because we're going to cut that little white trim off that's around the outside of this stamped image. Now I'm not going to show my coloring here simply because I'm not the best at coloring, and also I want to keep the focus on the card design. You could use any coloring method for this. After I'm done coloring, I'm going to cut this out right up against the black outline image. The reason I'm trimming off that little white trim around the edge is that it looks better with this card design. You could leave it on, but I find the card works much better if you trim that white part out. Now this image definitely is kind of tricky to trim around the white image, but you'll see my future ones are much easier to trim around. Next, I'm going to create the tri-fold card. So I'm taking the card that we created, the top folding card, and I'm going to trim just a little bit off the back of it. I'm trimming about 1/8 of an inch off of the back only. So here you can see the front of the card, and the back of the card is a little bit short. For this card, you're going to need another note card that's the same size, 4 1/4 by 5.5 top folding, and you're going to trim a little bit off the back of that one too. So basically you have 2 cards we're going to put together. You can see a little bit is cut off the back of each. Now what you're going to do is take that second card and you're going to flip it up. So I have that short end on the top, and we're going to glue these 2 together. So I'm going to open up this extra card here and put adhesive on the inside here. So I'm going to put lots of adhesive on there because I want this to stay on. I'm going to take the other card and line up the crease of this card with the edge of that back card there. Press those together nicely, and we have our tri-fold card. Now, if you didn't catch that, don't worry. I'm going to do it a couple more times in this video, so you'll be able to see it again. So there we have a tri-fold card, and we're ready to add our flower into the second panel. Now, I decided to add this flower in there with some foam tape, so it would kind of stand up when you open the card, and it stands out on the front of the card too. I will show you later in this video how you could just have it stamped inside of there and save the time of having to cut the image out. But I really think it looks cool to pop this up inside of the window. Okay, so I'm closing my card. I'm placing this right into the window, and you'll see there is a little opening around the flower because we trimmed off that little bit of extra. So it looks like the perfect window for that flower from the front. And when you open it up, you just have your flower popped up nicely. I'm adding some shimmer with my Tonic Aqua Shimmer pen to the flowers and the leaves. And next I'm going to stamp a sentiment on the inside also. So this time I'm stamping the word always from that same Pretty Pink Posh stamp set that I showed you earlier, the Love Sentiments. Sorry, my head gets in the way here, but now it says I love you on the outside and always on the inside. So I can do 3 little dots on the front to continue the message on the inside with 3 more little dots. I added some details to my flowers with a white Jelly Roll pen. I just created a bunch of tiny little dots on the outside edge of the petals, just for a little bit of detail. Now I did go back and color in the heart on the I love you message, and I stamped some tiny little hearts from a Pretty Pink Posh sentiment set with pink ink kind of scattered around the flowers on the front and on the inside. Now remember, you can always open this card up and write a long message on the inside if you wanted to. So it's a fun trifold design that leaves room for a letter inside. Okay, let's look at the finished card for our next example. I think it's best to see the finished card first. On this one, I actually die cut a few different images from the front, and I have that same trifold card design. So I'm going to show you this one pretty quickly because it's pretty much the same technique. This is the Pretty Pink Posh Hummingbird Thanks stamp set. I love hummingbirds, and so does my mom, so I can't wait to use this stamp set on cards for her. I like that it's a small size, so it's a little more cost-effective than a larger size. I went ahead and I stamped some of the hummingbirds and the sentiment on the front of a top folding 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. Now I'm using some tape just to tape the coordinating dies in place around each of the hummingbirds. After I run this through my die cut machine, I have the windows for each of the birds on the front of the card, and I have the birds themselves that I'll color with Copic markers. I will again trim each of these birds out right up against the black stamped outline to take off that little extra white trim around it. It really just gives a better look to the final card. Okay, so I'm going to trim a little bit off the back of this bird note card, and the little bit off the back of another white note card of that same 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch size. So here we have the cards with the shorter end on the back. I'm going to take this extra card, I'm going to flip it over, so the shorter end is on the top there. I'm going to open it up and fill the inside with adhesive. I find that this is the most effective way to do a trifold card like this because you can get the full note card size out of it and it's nice and sturdy. Okay, so there we have our trifold card. Next, I can put some foam adhesive on the back of our little hummingbirds. Remember, I cut these out right up to the edge. But this one has like a tiny little beak and a tiny little tail feathers. So I'm putting just regular adhesive on the little feathers on the end and the beak. But I'm putting foam adhesive on his body. So when I put this inside of the window, the body will be popped up, but the beak and those little intricate feathers will be taped down onto the card so they don't get caught on the card when you're opening and closing. And I'll do that with all 3 of the little birds. I really like the look of these birds kind of popped up and kind of peeking through that window that was perfectly cut for them. Okay, so next I can add a little sentiment on the inside also. You don't have to do that, you could leave that empty, but I thought this sentiment from this older Pretty Pink Posh Thoughtful Greetings stamp set would be perfect in here. So I'm just going to stamp this with black ink right on the inside. I will go and add little scattered blue hearts to the front and the inside of the card. And I like that there is a lot going on in the inside and the outside of this card. That's why I call them in and out cards. Okay, here's a look at the completed card that we're going to do next. This one is a little more involved, but definitely worth the effort. Again, I'm using a new Pretty Pink Posh stamp set. This is the Birthday Friends stamp set. These images are so sweet, and the 2 little girls looked like my daughter and her friend who happens to have a birthday party this weekend, so this is perfect. Now I wanted to put balloons into the little girl's hands. There's lots of images you can put in her hands, but I decided to go with the trio of balloons. Because the balloons will overlap with one of the stamped images, I need to do this card a little bit differently than the others. So just bear with me and you'll see why in a moment. So first I'm going to stamp the 2 little girls onto the front of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding white note card. So here I'm stamping it with a Copic friendly black ink because I can save all these extra pieces that I'm not using for future cards. Okay, so now I'm going to stamp the same things in the same position on a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white cardstock. This isn't a note card, just a piece of cardstock of the same size. Now this is the one that I'll actually do my coloring on. Okay, so now it's time to stamp the balloons, but the balloons are kind of behind the little girl's head a little bit, so I'm going to have to do some masking. Now I put my note card back into my MISTI, and here I have a little piece of a Post-it note that I had left over. I'm going to stamp the little girl in there, and this is going to be my mask. So I'm only going to cut out kind of the right side of her because that's all I need to cut out for this, and it'll save me a little bit of time. Now I can position the trio of balloons, and you can see it's going to overlap with her a bit. That's why I have to do the masking. And I will stamp this on both the note card and that extra white piece. So I'm doing all of this stamping on 2 things, once on a note card and once on a white piece of cardstock of the same size. So there we have our note card done. Now it's time to do the stamping on the white piece. The reason I'm doing this on 2 pieces is you see that this balloon image overlaps with the little girl. So we need to do our die cutting to overlap too for this technique. So that's why we need the 2 pieces, and you'll see that in a moment. Okay, so now that we have our pieces ready, it's time to do the die cutting. Now I'm going to do the die cutting just on the note card piece. So I'm going to take the coordinating little girl dies and place them right in place. Now notice when I do this, I'm going to cut the little girl away from her balloons. That's why I had to do the other piece, so that I would have a piece where they were connected still. So now I've cut the little girls out. I can get the coordinating die for the balloons, place that in place. And now we will have a window for the little girl with her balloons. So I'll go ahead and run this through the die cutting machine also. So now I have this window card here that the little girl that's stamped with her balloons fits nicely behind. Now you could try to do it in a different order, but I found I got my best results if I did it the way that I showed you. Okay, now we can turn this into a trifold card, trim a little bit off the back of our window note card, then trim a little bit off the back of an extra 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. We'll again adhere this together in the exact same way to create another trifold card. Now this trifold card design, once you do it a couple times, you get the hang of it very easily, and you can do them for horizontal cards too, and I'll show you that in a few moments. Okay, so now I can add my little girls right into the window. I colored them with Copic markers and cut them out right up against the black stamped line. And look how perfect that little girl with her balloons fits in that window. Again, you could have done it in a different order. You could have just die cut the windows and then tried to line up the stamping inside. But if you want those little girls kind of popped up with dimension, this was the easiest way to do it. Okay, so I stamped some tiny little yellow stars and kind of scattered in the background on the front and the inside of the card. And I'm using my black Nuvo drops to carefully add to the eyes of the little girl so they have more dimension. And so here you can see the completed card with Lila and her little friend Sophie. I have a greeting on the inside too. The fun thing about this card design is you can use 2 greetings, one on the front and one on the inside. In fact, you could use a third on the inside of that if you wanted to. This one here is from the Pretty Pink Posh Everyday Greetings stamp set that came out quite a while ago, but it was perfect for this card. Okay, so now on to our next example. This one is definitely the most involved, but I really like the results of it, so I decided to share it with you today. It works much like the last example with the little girls, where you have to do a bit of different stamping and die cutting to get it lined up just right. Okay, for this one, I'm using the Pretty Petunias stamp set again, and I have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding white note card in my MISTI. This time I'm stamping with a pool colored ink. This is My Favorite Things hybrid ink. This is a Copic friendly ink. I'm going to color this with Copic, so that's why I chose to use this ink. So I stamped that on the note card, and I'm going to do the same stamping on a white piece of cardstock of the same size. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I wanted my leaves to kind of peek out from behind the flowers, so I created masks for each of my flowers, putting them in place, and now I can go ahead and stamp some leaves. I'm also going to stamp a third flower up there on the top. I'm going to do this again with the My Favorite Things hybrid inks, and I'll do the same stamping on both the note card and the extra piece of white cardstock. By stamping them in the exact same place on the note card and the white cardstock, I can be sure that when I die cut them out, they'll line up perfectly on the card. If you don't do that, it'll be hard to make sure that your leaves are positioned just perfectly behind the windows. A nice thing about these cards also is there are leftover pieces that you can use for other cards. So thankfully Lila was here with me after I filmed this, so we were able to make some thank you cards for her grandma using some of the pieces that were left over. So here I have moved the masks from the note card to the white piece of cardstock so that I can do the same stamping on it. And you'll notice I'm stamping the flower with the pool ink and the leaves with a green ink. The two colors I used are Summer Splash and Sour Apple. Now just one more round of stamping. I'm going to mask off that top flower, put two leaves behind that and stamp this onto the white cardstock, and then I'll do the same again with the note card. So what I end up with is a white note card that's stamped with the leaves and flowers, and then a white piece of cardstock of the same size with the same flowers and leaves stamped, all in the same position. This is when it's really handy to have a stamping tool. If you don't have a stamp positioner like this one, you could definitely do your die cutting first and stamp through the windows using masking, but I find this to be easier. Okay, so now on the note card itself, I'm going to use the coordinating dies to die cut all these pieces out. It's going to take me a few rounds of die cutting since these dies overlap or the images overlap. You can't overlap the die cutting in one round. So there, I first die cut out some of the pieces. Now I'm going back and lining up the rest of the images, and I'll run that through the die cut machine too. So you end up with these windows that are perfectly positioned for the stamped images that I'm going to color here. So I colored these with Copic markers. I'm not great with Copic markers, but the nice thing about this technique is I can color outside of the lines, which makes it much faster for me. The nice thing about these images is that they're easy to cut out with scissors right up against the stamped line. Okay, now time to make the tri-fold card for this one. This is a little bit different because you can see it's a side folding note card. So on the back of this, I'm going to trim a little bit off the edge. And I have another note card that's the same format. I'm going to trim a little bit off the back of that one too. So now it's time to glue these two together. So I'm going to position them just right to kind of show you how to do this. So there you can see the little bit cut off the back of the edge of each of these. I'm going to take this extra note card and I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to put adhesive on the inside there. So this is the side of the card that doesn't have anything trimmed off of it. And I can take the other card and put it right inside. Just make sure to line up that outside edge there of the back note card with the creased edge of this front note card. And there you have your tri-fold card design in the other direction. Okay, so now it's smooth sailing from here. I'm just going to use my little foam adhesive behind each of these little flower pieces, and I'm going to pop them right through the window. Now, remember I cut these flowers smaller than the window because I hand cut them. And the nice thing is you can see that little trim around it, but also the card doesn't get caught up on the die cuts when you open and close it. Okay, so now I wanted to add the Hello Friend die cut to the front of my card. This is new from Pretty Pink Posh, and it is just beautiful. I wanted to stack together a few of these die cuts just for some dimension. So I die cut the Hello and the Friend 3 times from black cardstock, and I'm gluing them together, stacking them together with the strong liquid adhesive. This takes a little bit of time, but I really feel it adds so much to the final result of the card. Next, I'm going to put adhesive on the back of my stacked die cuts and glue them to the front of this card. Now they're going to hang over those flower windows. That's okay. I'll show you how to remove the stick from behind it in a moment. Putting liquid adhesive on the back of this, make sure you use something strong. And I'm going to position it right over the die cut windows. I have some scrap paper behind it so that I can catch any of the adhesive that goes through so it doesn't get on my work surface. Once I've placed this in position, I'll go ahead and add the friend, and then I can remove the stick from the back. Now my little trick for removing the stick from the back is to use my anti-static powder tool. So I'm just kind of rubbing away some of the extra adhesive here with my fingers, and I'm going to tap my anti-static powder tool right over this, and that removes or kind of covers up the stickiness. So now I have this Hello Friend that kind of floats above the flowers. On the inside, I've stamped I Appreciate You from a Pretty Pink Posh stamp set, and there you can see the final card with the die cuts kind of floating over the window, and then you have the flowers that line up inside, added with foam adhesive for some fun dimension. Now this card definitely took more time than the others because there's so much stamping and die cutting involved with it. However, I think it's worth it because the card is beautiful on the front and on the inside. And you can do this with pretty much any stamps and coordinating dies that you may already have. Okay, so now I promised you a super easy version of this card. And here it is. You'll notice that the hummingbird is stamped on the inside of the card, not cut out and glued there. So watch how easy this is. I have a top folding 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. I'm stamping the bird and Hello Gorgeous on the front. Now I'm opening up the card, removing the Hello Gorgeous, and just stamping the bird. So my bird will be in the exact same place that I stamped it on the front of the card. Now if you don't have a stamping tool like this, what you can do is stamp your bird on the front, die cut it out, and then stamp through the window onto the inside of the card. That is very easy to do also. So I use the coordinating die to cut out the bird from the front of the card, and now my window lines up perfectly with the bird on the inside. So I went ahead and colored him with Copic markers, and now I'm adding some shimmer to him with my Tonic Aqua shimmer pen. So you can see that this version is much easier than the other ones I showed you. However, that little birdie isn't popped up on the inside, which I really liked the look of that. I felt like it shows more from the front, but this is another option that you can do. And since I kept my images kind of towards the bottom, there's room to write a message on the inside of the card, so I didn't do the trifold card design. Okay, so there you have it, a fun way to create in and out cards where your images are both on the front of the card and on the inside, and also a trifold card design. If you're interested in these products, I link them below in the YouTube description. Be sure to check out my blog, though. I have lots of photos there for you. In the middle are a couple other videos that might be helpful to you, kind of related to the card that I did today. Thanks for spending time with me. I hope you were inspired by one of these cards, and I'll see you again soon.